Welcome back to another grasshopper tutorial. This is a short one, and I wanted to just cover a couple of key components, but put them together in a way that maybe I haven't shown before. So what you can see on the screen is a set of boxes, and these are just randomly generated. This is not the aspect of the tutorial that's so important, but what I wanted to show you is how to change the color of objects based on their location. And in this case, I'm not doing it with gradation, but I'm doing it by capturing, in this case, the Z value of the individual elements, and then mapping that or remapping that to a color code, and then converting that into text and feeding that to the custom preview component, so that the actual Z value of these individual boxes is driving their color. And so as they change, so if I zoom in and show this, if these objects change, what we have is a color code. The boxes may change their location, but they're color coded from 0 to 255 in terms of their Z value. And so where this ends up all the way at the end is just simply with some text that feeds into the material. So let me show you how to do this, and we'll go step by step, and we'll build up these sets of relationships. It's a relatively simple and quick tutorial, but it can be very useful as you want to start to color code things, and it need not be driven by the Z value. It could be the X, the Y, or the X, Y, and Z. And so I like to use the simple representation to give immediate feedback during the design process. And so as you're making decisions, you can change those things on the fly. So given this sense, let's start with a new Rhino file. And I'll just do large objects feet. Doesn't matter the units. And I'm going to do a new document here. So I'll start with dropping in the bifocals so you can see what's happening. Let's start with a box in Rhino. And so I'm going to draw a solid box, 3 points and the height. And again, it doesn't matter where we do this, and actually maybe it's better to do it not at the 0. So I'll click a point, I'll say 20, or 200. And again, your units will change this by 200. None of the dimensions really matter. And then I'll give it a height of, let's say, 300. So now I have a box to work with. Let's start by creating a box container. So we can just double click and then we'll type box. With this, we'll right click it and we'll set one box, and we'll set the box up. So it wants to follow that. And so we have this simple box. We can hide our box in Rhino, and we'll hide this in a second. What I wanted to do is create a population of points. And so we can populate 3D. And with this, what we're going to do is our region is going to be defined by our box. So we can set that. We can hide our box. And just do that with Control Q. So now we see a series of points in space. We can set the count of these. The default is, let's see, the default is 100. So maybe I can do 50 is less than 200. If we want to increase it or decrease it. And our seed value, I'm going to set the seed value from 1 is less than 2,000. We can see as we change the seed value, the points will change. As we change the count, there'll be more or less of them. And so with this, Let's take our population of points. I'll just create a point container to hold those. I can hide our populate 3D, and now we have our points. Let's do two things. We'll branch off from this point. First thing that we'll do is let's make a center box. And so we can type just center, and we'll get center box. What it needs for this is just simply the base. And so we'll give it the base, and at the smallest increment we can see a series of small boxes. If we want to, so those are set to 1. Maybe we set a slider from 1 is less than 10. And I'll feed that to all of the X, Y, and Z. And these X, Y, and Z are not the location, but it's the dimension. And so as we increase this, we can see the size of those boxes increase. I just want them to be big enough that I can see them once they're color-coded. So that looks good. Let's keep moving. Now the next thing that we want to do is from our set of points, and maybe I will create a whole series of panels that we can keep an eye on exactly what's happening with all of our data as we work through it. So we can see a series of points. And how many points do we have? We have about 100. I'm going to turn this down. Maybe I'll even start much smaller. Maybe I'll set the minimum value to 10. Which just means we'll be able to see everything, whatever it is, within one panel here. So we can see our count is driving the number of points. I've got 18 points. Remember, because we start at 0, I have 18 points, and we can see X, Y, and Z related to them. So I've got those in space, and that's working how I would like it to be working. So now let's deconstruct our points, which are here, because I want to just color code these based on their location from 0. So I'm going to do that by deconstructing the point. And so I'm going to pull in the points, but all I'm going to pull out of this is the Z. And so if I copy my panel, and again, there's nothing magic about the Z, just that if you want to color code them in the X direction, the Y direction, or the Z direction, that's the component that we'll pull out. And so now we can see we've got a range of values. Looks like maybe smallest is 12, and the greatest is maybe 288, something in that range. So we can, let's see, let's get the bounds of that. I want to know the minimum and the maximum. And bounds is a nice tool that will, so we're getting the bounds of a domain, and it basically gives us the min and the max of a set of numbers. So if I pull those Z values into the bounds, I can copy the panel. There's going to be a much smaller set of numbers, which is 12 to 288. If I change my populate, maybe a different seed value, that min and the max should also change because those boxes are changing. And so we can see that this is live data coming into here, and this gives us a simple domain from the min to the max. And so that's working well. We like that. Let's now the next part is to, let's see. I'm going to change the order from the way that I worked before. Actually, I'm going to do something that I did previously and then I've corrected, but I want to show you a mistake and how we would work through that and what resulted and then how we would change that. So let's start with remapping our numbers. This is a really useful tool, and it's just remap numbers. So what does this take? There's 3 values of what comes in. So the value to remap is going to be our z components. The source is going to be the domain, and so this is basically our bounds, because those values go from min to max, and so we need to understand that. And then we need to know how to map that source. And also, these numbers could be, this is giving us the min to the max, but it could essentially be from 0 to 300, right? If we came all the way back to the beginning and we looked at what the size of our box was, we know that we set that from 0 to 300. So we could do this a slightly different way. We could extract some of these values within that boundary. But for now, what I'm going to do is just use the domain from the min and the max from our actual z values. That's our source. And then our target value is going to be from 0 to 255. And I'm going to do this, the simplest way to define a domain is just to use a panel, / 0 to 255, and enter. So this is a really simple way to define another domain. The reason why I'm using 0 to 255 is the RGB color space, that it's R is 0 to 255, RGB, red, green, and blue are all between 0 and 255. And I can even show you that with a swatch, in the way that when we click on this, we can see that, let's see, there's different color spaces. Basically, here's RGB from 0, 0, 0, 150, 150, 150, 255, 255, 255. And that's basically white. And so that's why I'm going to remap whatever our values are within our z values. I'm going to map that to 255, and that will allow us to see that range. So what comes out of these mapped values? So let's create another, I'll copy that panel. And these are our mapped values. We're coming to here. And we can see that they are within 0 to 255. And we have a 0 and we have a 255. My guess would be that the min is position number 1, or indices number 1, and the max is number 7, which we see there. So we see that the max, which was greater than 255, became 255. The minimum that was 6 now became 0. So we're distributing our population of z values within a range that's 0 to 255. So that's making sense right now. Let's do one more, well, there's a couple more steps. So we'll get this to work, and then we'll go from there. The RGB values, so if I bring up a custom preview tool, which is what we're going to use, we're going to plug in our actual boxes, our center boxes here. I'm going to plug those in because that's what we actually want to custom preview. That will be our geometry. And we can hide our boxes. We can even hide our points. And so we have this. So that material, typically what we would do is we would make a swatch and plug in our swatch into there. We can see that they're all white. If we change our swatch value, all of those boxes will change color, and that's fine. In this case, I want to not use a swatch. Instead, I want to create text values that are R, G, B, or 0 to 255, 0 to 255, 0 to 255. So what we have are a set of values, and we can decide whether these are R, G, or B. And so let's just Let's just create some of these and we'll see the way that it works. So the first thing that we want to do is to concatenate this. And there's a couple of options under set and under text that allow us to join text, split text, format text, sort text, do any number of things. And I'm going to concatenate. And concatenate just means to put them together. And so this will be a simple function where we're going to take our mapped values as our first fragment. And then let's create a panel // and this will be comma, let's say 0, 0. And so what this will do is it's going to take our text values or our number values that are coming out of the remapped values here as fragment A, and then it's going to add comma 0, 0 to them, which will essentially allow us to be that our value is going to change, all the other values will stay, the G and the B will stay 0. So let me plug that in and let's create a new panel and we'll see what this looks like. So the results from the concatenate are here, and we can see that what we end up with is our first value, 188.86. So it's 188.86, comma 0, comma 0. We can see 0, comma 0, comma 0. So let's plug in these into our material. Now we can see a couple of things happening. We can see some of these are wireframe. One is black, one is red. Okay, so here's how I realized one of the things that was happening is that my two values are my min and my max, and they are the only ones, the only values without a decimal place. We can see 255, 0, 0, and 0, 0, 0. This means, or this tells us that we can't use decimal places as our value. So there's another text function that we can use where we can split the text. And so again, that's under sets and under text, and it allows us to text split. So I'm going to just slide a few of these things over, and I'm going to text split what's coming out of the mapped values. So let's see what happens. We'll bring this into the text. Our separator is going to be the decimal place. And so // and then just simply a dot and enter. This will allow us to split our text. Let's create a new panel here, and we'll see what comes out. What comes out is a tree where we've split each of these through there. And so then let's make sure that this is the case. And we may have a slight problem in that some of our trees only have one option. So let's introduce a little bit more of a space, and let me cull some of these. I want to cull nth. And let's see if this fixes the problem. So I'm going to bring this split list out. This is culling the second. And let's see what this looks like. So what this has done, and let me even just, well, we can see that it's reduced or taken away all of those. Let me just flatten this to make sure that we still have 18 values, which is what we should have if we come back here to before the decimal places. We have 0 to 17. Those got added, and now we have 17 values here. So now what we essentially did is we removed from these three steps. We can see the first one is 188.86. Then we can see 188, and then the 0.86 dropped to the second line. And by culling the second value, we've removed all of the decimal places. So now let's concatenate this cleaned list. And now we can see as we introduce that into our rendering or into our custom preview, what we end up with are solid rendered elements. And because the G and B value are set to 0, this goes from black to red. If we want to manipulate this a bit, we could change, for instance, the G value to 100. Press enter. Oh, don't press enter. And we can see that we introduced green into it. We can introduce some blue into it. Now we see they start to become a little muted in their color. We could go all the way up to 255. And we can see now it's a change in the R value. So you can manipulate these. We could also pull the X and Y values and do that same process in terms of setting these. But what you get is a nice distribution of basically a visual representation of the altitude of these, the Z value from 0. And if we go all the way back to the beginning, we can introduce more boxes. And we can change our seed value, and we can see these vary and change. So really simple way. The key takeaway here is that your swatch that we've typically been using as a graphic input can actually be a text value, and its format is R, G, B, and we can input values for those, and we can see the way that that might change dynamically. So I hope this was helpful. I'm sure it's helpful for some of you. A little bit extra here in terms of having all of the panels across there so that you can see the way that they change, but a really simple set of operations. If this was helpful, give it a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and I want to continue to update these and add tips and tricks along the way. If this helps you make something great, feel free to share it with me. So thanks for listening, and watch for more of these tutorials. Thanks.